friends. Welcome to the Show to Be Named Later podcast. I'm Jonny Voss, and I'm joined by one of the few people who saw and actually enjoyed Weekend at Bernie's 2, Noah Stoerzinger. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Now, I've got a bone to pick with you right off the bat. Your adopted team can't even beat Green Bay, and help us out. I understand that was Mahomes' first game at Lambeau, but seriously, that was embarrassing.
First of all, I am never associating with the Kansas City Chiefs, and I will put that out there for everyone to know that I will never cheer for that team. We can get into the fan base later, but yeah, that's disappointing. I wish they could have helped us out. Of all the games that I would have liked them to win, because I love going to bars and watching them lose. It's the best thing ever.
Wow.
But
and you weren't even around when they beat the Vikings in their very first Super Bowl, man. I wasn't even around at that yet. Anyways, go ahead.
It's a shame they couldn't even beat Mr. Love, and I don't know.
Yeah, it was embarrassing last night, and that's a game that I thought for sure. I'm like, there's no way Green Bay is going to win this game tonight, and I don't know. They're playing good football right now.
Well, and what are we? So I think right now we're the 6th seed. Green Bay's number 7.
Yes. We still hold
6 records, huh?
Yep. Well, and I think we only have one division loss. Now we have 3 division games coming up, but I don't know. It's interesting, and I think we'll get to that football in a little bit. My first question right off the bat, and I don't know your history on this at all, but boy, there's a lot of controversy from yesterday. I don't know if you watch college football at all, but I was wondering what your thoughts are. So this is the last year they're going to have a 4-team playoff system, and then they're going to go to 12 teams. And I really have a lot to say on that in just a second, but there was a snub. Absolutely. Your thoughts?
So college football has never been. Now I went to NDSU, so more on the FCS than the FBS, and I watched my team just absolutely annihilate these small teams for
but never moved up like James Madison,
right? But so I'm not, and college football has never been something that I've watched as much as even college basketball. So not completely familiar with how the format works. However, if I'm not mistaken, FSU,
Florida State, yep,
13-0, and they
undefeated.
What do you want them to do?
So exactly, and so what I'm hearing. So you have Michigan versus Alabama. Alabama upset Georgia in the SEC championship game. Georgia only has 1 loss, but they're out, which means that the University of Minnesota will still be the only team to win back-to-back national championships in college football, because Georgia's not even going to get a chance.
Right.
Alabama gets in because you knew they weren't going to snub Saban, right? Even though he's got a loss, and his team has a loss to one of the other 4 teams, the Texas Longhorns. Texas has a loss to Oklahoma State, and then you have Michigan. I believe what I'm hearing, at least from hearing Florida State's head coach's comments, where he was like, well, what do you want us to do? Now, the idea for this is that you want the best 4 teams in college football in the playoffs going forward for those next 3 games. Florida State lost their starting quarterback, still won. They lost their second string quarterback and down a third string, still won. I don't know how you can exclude an undefeated team in that the whole idea. And I understand, okay, Alabama lost earlier in the year, right? Texas lost to Oklahoma State. Michigan still undefeated. But how do you leave Florida State out? I just to Florida State's credit, they're saying what do we have to do? We keep winning. You're just going to say because of depth chart now that we don't belong in the college playoff system? I don't know, man. And here's the thing. You never lived through when there was no, I mean, you did, but you didn't. You didn't know what it was like to live in college football where you could have, very rarely did you have number 1 versus number 2 in a bowl game to decide who the national championship was or the national champion was. So you might have all these weird scenarios, which I witnessed myself. In 1990, I went to the Citrus Bowl, which was Nebraska versus Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech beats a Nebraska team that was in the top 20, but maybe on the backside of 10 to 20. That night, Notre Dame played Colorado in the Orange Bowl with Rocket Ishmael and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I was cheering because I was at the Nebraska-Georgia Tech game, and I wanted Colorado to lose to a Notre Dame team so that I could say I went to a national championship game, blah, blah, blah. Rocket Ishmael returned a punt for a touchdown, and it got called back for an illegal block. Notre Dame ends up losing to Colorado, and you had co-national champions. You had Colorado and Georgia Tech, I believe, that year. So technically, Jonny Voss did see, I don't know, a half national championship game. My point is that, yeah, it was fractured then, but it's still fractured now. And I don't understand how they can't get it right. And I know it's a long rant, but I'm going to keep going. Now you're going to go to a 12-team playoff system next year. If you can't motherfucking figure out who the best 4 teams in college football are, please explain how you're going to figure out the best 12 teams in college football.
Well, yeah, but I think of for FSU, right, when if it's the depth chart argument, isn't that the fun part? Isn't that the part that you want to see of, holy shit, they're going through on a third-string quarterback? It's exactly it's almost what the Vikings are going through right now of like, hey, man, if they can get a playoff run going with fucking Josh Dobbs out there, holy, like that's what you want to see.
Which makes sports so fucking cool, and that's why you put them in. You give them a chance. But what, the NCAA is worried about ratings? Now, let me remind you that some of those semifinal games haven't been these shootout, great, matchups. They've been blowouts. So why you wouldn't give Florida State a chance is beyond me, and I think it's terrible. And it only leads me to think, how do you qualify for the 12th seed in a tournament next year? Are you going to the Citadel at number 20, even though they're undefeated, isn't going to get a chance at being one of the 12 teams? You understand what I'm saying? I don't know if it's addition by addition for college football because they didn't get it right this fucking year.
So how would you change it? What would you do?
Okay. Would you expand it to 12 teams? That's the first thing I'm going to say.
I always thought 4 was kind of stupid, personally.
You wanted more teams?
Give me more teams. Give me more games. Give me more competition.
But 12?
I don't know. I'd have to see it, but I think more than 4 for sure. Like that is,
I agree with that, but
because more than half the time, it's if I'm watching the teams who can recruit the most amount of the highest amount of talent and are good every year, and I'm watching the same teams win. And that, like, to me, that's like watching the Yankees and the Red Sox against each other every day.
Okay. But I guess my question is, if you expand it to 12, and we're going to have to do our research on this because I want to know, how are they going to be able to determine the best 12 teams in the country when you have a top 20 or a top 25, in the AP or the UPI, whatever it is. So I guess that's one of my questions. I love the idea of a 12 team making a run because that's what makes sports great. Okay. And if a 9-3 team makes it to the championship game, that's what makes sports great. Okay. But right now, and I've had a problem with college football, the way they determine champions or whatever it is. But man, Seminoles got screwed, dude.
Oh yeah, yeah. You got to feel bad for them because again, we can say it as much as we want. Like, what are you supposed to do? You did everything you had to do. You won 13 games, right? Like, so at the end of the day, what I don't know. I don't think anyone has an answer to now what or why aren't they there, or it's sad for them.
So the other thing that concerns me, you know, 12 teams to me might be a little high, but you know, in a world where we're going to celebrate the person that came in 16th, where do you finally draw the line? Because, you know, with the in-season tournament in the NBA, is that gonna are the NBA playoffs going to expand suddenly to where you have 12 or 16 teams, or everybody makes the playoffs? That's concerning to me because I guess I don't want college football to be like the NCAA basketball tournament where you've got everybody that's playing gets a shot.
For the most part, I think. I mean, really, to get in, like I think of these smaller schools. I mean, you got to win your conference tournament essentially for the smaller guys. But I mean, there are a couple teams for the NBA play-in where you're like, I don't know, but like you said, like these Cinderella runs are why we love sports. Which is why I think it'd still be kind of cool. Now, maybe you go down to, you don't do 12 teams, maybe you do what, 8, 10 teams.
I was thinking more like 8, but
yeah. But again, I think, I know a lot of people, I think this is where we need to stop when we think about like the NBA, for example, when it comes to expanding the playoffs. Same thing with MLB. I think we can't just let everyone get a shot because, I mean, teams get hot, right? Like you could suck for the whole year, get hot quick. And
Arizona Diamondbacks.
I think of the Atlanta Hawks a couple years ago. Like, it's fun to watch, but it is tough for teams that maybe performed all year.
And I think that's why this partnership is so cool, because we talk about things that, like, you as a youngster haven't lived through. Like, you know, for me, 87 and 91 for the Twins was so much more than you will ever experience in your lifetime, because that was at a time when only one team came out of the division that you were playing in. You know what I mean? Only 2 teams made it from each league. So you went, I'm the elite of the elite. Like, I'm the cream of the crop, you know, where you add more teams. And I'm not opposed to Major League Baseball expanding the playoff field. However, I just don't want baseball ever to get to that point where we have 16 teams, you know, in the playoffs, because 162 games, right? You know. So I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'm wondering, do you have any predictions for a national champion this year?
Unfortunately, I don't, only because I have not been keeping up on it. And I'm personally not a huge fan of any team, to be honest. If I had to throw my guess out there, I might go Alabama.
We all know that. We all know it's going to happen, because I didn't even think Alabama was going to be in the playoffs, and we know Saban's going to weasel his.
And that's exactly why I picked them, and I would probably put some money on it too.
Yep. I agree. That was my choice as well, and you know, and and not to beat a dead horse, but just to make sure that my point's getting across about how I feel about, I guess, where we're going with expansion, all these things. The Gophers, I was wrong on our last podcast. The Gophers are not playing Jerry Kill in New Mexico State. They are playing in whatever bowl is in Detroit again against Ball State. Bowling Green, not Ball State, Bowling Green. This is the third time. Well, let's go back. The bowl commissioner, because I don't even know what the bowl is called. It's not the Little Caesars Bowl, right? It's the
sure. If it's Detroit, that sounds actually right.
Yeah, right. It's got to be the Little Caesars. Anyways, the Gophers are the only team in college football to won this bowl twice, and the only team to have played in it 3 times. They're 5-6. No, you see my point? Like, when you have so many bowls that you can't even field winning teams into your bowl schedule. I mean, this isn't the WNBA. Come on, you gotta have a team with at least a 500 record in a bowl game, right?
Yep,
or who cares about going to a bowl?
The Quick Lane Bowl.
Makes me. What's that?
The Quick Lane Bowl.
Right. Was that used to be the Little Caesars Bowl, or is there a Little Caesars Bowl?
I would assume it used to be.
Okay.
Little Caesars is everywhere in Detroit.
Still makes me angry. All right. So, going to switch gears now, unless you still want to talk college football. Okay. I actually had to make a phone call tonight to do a little research. But I don't know if you have been paying attention, but the Minnesota Wild did something that I guess I approved of at the time in the season. They fired their coach because they were terrible, and they hired John Hines, who I believe was a disc jockey at WLOL here in the city. No, that's a different John Hines. Hired a new guy, and I guess what I'm confused by, so since the hiring of John Hines, the Minnesota Wild have won 3 straight games. And I believe they've outscored their opponents something like 12-3. Now, prior to that, Everson had the same team. We couldn't score goals, and we were putting up goals at a huge rate, like 4, 5, 6 goals. So is hockey so different than, like, I've never played hockey. I can boot hockey, broom ball, but I can't even skate. So I don't know the game. Even though I watch every Wild game, I don't know the game of hockey and all the dynamics that come across compared to football or baseball or basketball or soccer. Is it possible that you can switch a coach in a sport like hockey and suddenly everything makes sense?
I think absolutely. I also didn't play hockey, but I think it's just the thing with sports or team sports in general. I mean, think back to some of your coaches. I don't know if you've had some weird patterns with coaches or whatnot.
Absolutely.
There are teams, and I can think of one off the top of my head right now that I played on that I'm not going to throw it out there, but I do think we would have completely. We had so much talent on our team, and a coach makes or breaks a team as much as people.
But does it at the pro level? Because here's my question though. Like, if the Timberwolves were in a similar situation, let's say Randy Whitman was their coach, okay, and suddenly you fire him and you bring someone in different, and I don't know who to compare John Hines to in the NBA crowd because I don't know anything about John Hines except he was a former NHL coach. But what I'm saying is, in basketball or in football, I don't know about baseball, but you would not think that overnight with the exact same players, you would have a complete turnaround. And that's why I had to call one of my buddies because I don't know hockey. So, I mean, I give credit to Frankie, the what a nice guy. Frankie coaches hockey, played hockey, has been around hockey for a long time. And I said, you've got to explain this to me. What is going on with the Minnesota Wild? And he said, well, it might not be sustainable, but there are points like what you said, where all of a sudden, boom, there's this spark in the locker room, in the clubhouse, whatever, and guys start playing. But I was under the impression that our former coach with the Minnesota Wild wasn't this Nazi guy who everybody hated or didn't want to play for, or anything like that. And so I'm wondering what the compound is.
So I think about it and it's not that who was it? Evanson,
Yeah.
That was our coach.
Dean Evanson.
Not that he was this hard ass guy, but there's a difference, I think, when you're playing that bad. When you're playing, you get uptight, right? You get tight. You want to make the right decision all the time. You're not necessarily. It sounds simple to me, and this is how I interpret it, but you're not having fun. And you lose it. You lose your coach. You lose all those games. You're probably not a huge fan of your coach at that time in place. And I think about when you go through these coaching changes, and it's probably not sustainable. Because Hines comes in and he's not going to come in right away and go, we're doing this. He's going to let him play. And I think that's what's happening, playing hockey and playing the game that they like. And I think that leads to just playing loose, playing fun. I played plenty of those games before, right? Where you're like,
right.
If your coach is out on the day, you're like, oh.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
And you kind of play more fun, and you're like, that was – you pull out game, or you're doing stuff that you're like, I didn't know I could do that. I mean, I played basketball through middle school. It was all right. When I got to high school, I did not have a certain coach coaching me that made me, when I played, put me in a certain role, whatever. And I was doing stuff in high school that I'm like, I had no idea I could even do that. I was just playing basketball, right? And I think that's maybe what is happening. It's not going to be sustainable, I don't think, but that's my interpretation
right.
of
it. And to give Frankie credit, he said, and I agreed. Like I felt bad for Dean when he got canned, because number one, the Wild are going to be handcuffed for the next 2 years because of the Suter and the Parisi deal. All right, so you can't bring in guys that are going to take you to the next level. And the other thing is, your number one stud, Kaprizov, is just not playing the kind of hockey is by far his worst year as a Wild player. But so there were a lot of things that were working against Dean. And so when I talked to Frankie, he was like, you'd like to see what he'd be able to do, because right now you're just the revolving door between St. Paul and Iowa in Des Moines, where the AAA affiliate is, because they don't want to bring guys up to last for more than however days they can, because then they got to pay them more. So then they send them back down and they bring other guys up. Okay, so it's not a consistent or maybe a fair deal right now, but shoot, man, John Hines got him playing really good hockey. And so I think it's something to keep an eye on, because I would be very intrigued about what the Wild, even if Kaprizov starts playing the kind of hockey that we're used to so far, where this team is going. Last thing I'm going to say about the Wild, for, 30 years, I've been reading Patrick Royce's Turkey of the Year. Every year on Thanksgiving, he gives the Turkey of the Year. That's, the equivalent of who messed up as regarding Minnesota sports. And I got my I didn't see it on Thursday morning, and I told my buddy Ozzy, I go, it's got to have to do with the Wild because they were so bad at that point, and I believe it was 20 years of hockey futility in Minnesota, and to be the state of hockey, it's not happening, and it hasn't for like 20 years, and it's really sad that we're at that state. But the one thing I will say about the Wild and the spot they're in right now, I think they fired the coach at the right time in the season because there's a lot of season to be played yet. And for them to figure it out, you do that now instead of in March where you're just going, oh, we're just going to fight to try to make the playoffs. Where right now you can say, nope, we got a clean slate somewhat. Now let's see what happens and let's move towards a playoff spot.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's always hard when you fire a coach or think about that scenario in general, because especially during the season, right? Like that's always interesting to see. But I think you're right. It is early enough in the year too, where I think it's you can kind of evaluate what you have at that point and see where you're going to go. So, as much as it was hard to fire him, I think you're right. I think it was a good move, and we'll see where we go from here. So,
okay, as long as we're talking Minnesota sports, might as well switch to another team that's actually playing pretty good as well. Last time I checked, Minnesota Timberwolves have the best record in the NBA, and I'm going to say that right off the fucking bat because, yes, they have the same record as the Boston Celtics, except we beat their ass. So we have the best record in the NBA. Minnesota Timberwolves are playing really, really well.
They are, and I think the last time we talked, they played the Jazz, and then they played Charlotte the other day. I don't know if you watched the Charlotte game.
I did. I've been watching them all, Noah. I know it's a new. I'm feeling like a phoenix rising from Arizona right now, watching this team.
Absolutely, it's hard not to like. I mean, I missed the Toronto game and I missed one of the Memphis games, but that's it, man. Like I look forward every day to a Timberwolves game, and every time they play, you're like, they're gonna win this. They're gonna win this game. Like it's such a different feel. The Charlotte game, I think a lot of people were I don't want to say frustrated with how that went because it was Charlotte, but folks, those are the games that they lose every year. We always suck against Charlotte. You gotta beat. You have to win these games, and that's where I think the ranking of I don't think the Wolves are. Yes, we're 15-4, which I still can't believe we're 15-4.
I know.
And some people discredit. Well, they've been playing easy teams, or there's some.
Nope.
Not every team is
all the way across the board, and it's still the NBA every night.
Absolutely, right? And these are again like we can make excuses like we did last year because we didn't win these games last year. If they would have won a handful of these games last year, it would have been a much different story. And this team is doing it, mind you, without one of their best defenders in Jaden McDaniels, without a backup point guard, Jordan McLaughlin, and without their top scorer, Anthony Edwards, right now for the past 2.5 games. So, I mean, the fact that we beat the Thunder without Anthony Edwards, too, I mean, that Thunder team was fully healthy.
Yep.
And they are a scary team, and we beat them.
So here's what I saw against Utah, and in some respects against Charlotte as well. For the, I don't know, last 10 years, maybe give or take a year sprinkled in there, I was so used to the Minnesota Timberwolves playing with the team for about 3 quarters, right? And then the fourth quarter, obviously the better team just, okay, we're done. We're done playing with you guys now. Ball game, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I saw against the Utah Jazz was, yeah, we'll let you play for a little bit. And then the second half, boom, shut them down, said that's it. Charlotte was a little, disappointing. Charlotte started out very, very hot. But when push came to shove at the end of the game, it was the T-Wolves that said, no, this is still ours. Okay. I'm so used to being on the other side of it where you just go, if we could have just won like the third quarter, they went on that 20-0 run. And that's why we lost this game. The Wolves seem to go, you know what? We're the ones that are going to be dictating how the end of the game is going to end. Like, I love it. And that's what I've seen in the last 2 games, regardless if Charlotte was an ugly win. I don't care, man. You win them, baby. On the road in the NBA.
It was, Michael Grady had tweeted this out. He was like, regardless of the healthy sheet or the win-loss record of that team, that was a good ass win because, man, like here's the thing about the NBA, regardless of the record, a team can come in and beat you. Like, these are all still professional basketball players. They can still any team. I mean, we played San Antonio here on Saturday or whatever. That team's won 3 games. They have not won in a month. They can still come out and kick our ass, right? Like, you never know. And Terry Rozier been playing really well over there, so he was playing well. And but you're right. Like, that team Minnesota just took it at the end and said, no, we are. They know they're the better team, right? Like, they come in with so much talent. And the fact that they're still the number 1 defense in the NBA, I think they're number 2 or 3 in net rating. The offense, I think, can still use some work. I know it's iffy without Edwards and McDaniels right now, but it's a scary team, and teams should be scared to play us, which I've never thought I would say.
Now, I saw an interesting interview with Mike Conley today, and he said after the Charlotte game, I think they were at practice yesterday or maybe it was today, and he said, dude, dog, I'm tired. And Mike Conley was trying to tell him, like, okay, at 15-4, everyone's going to be gunning for you every game. So, like you say, San Antonio's only won 3 games this year. They're still going, that's the top team in the NBA. We're going to give at least that team a run. And Towns is tired. Well, I'm sorry. That's how the season's going to go. Everyone's going to be gunning for you from now on, unless, like you say, we have a 5 or 6 game losing streak mixed in there. Do you think that will take a toll on this team? Because they've never been in that spot ever, So will that eventually take a toll on them, that everybody is going to be bringing their A game every time the Wolves take the floor?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, when you're playing a game, I mean, you should first of all be expecting that the team is going to come out and try to whoop your ass. Like, that's just competitive basketball for me.
It's still the NBA though.
Well, my biggest concern right now is we've been winning all these games. We've only had 2 back-to-backs. But I think what's going to hurt them is, I think with I don't want to say lack of a bench, because I think the bench has been very good, but starters have been playing a lot of minutes. Mike Conley is 36 years old. He's not going to play 82 games.
Right.
He shouldn't, I should say that.
Right.
Because we're going to need him come playoff time. And so I think what I worry about is the attrition that the season might take it, and in such high level basketball, you get tired, and that's why I do like the rotation and everything, but I do think Finch should try to mix in some guys here and there. I mean, hell, our rookies, Wendell Moore and Josh Minot, Leonard Miller. I mean, these guys, I think they can play, man. They've been playing well in the G League. Like, let's give them a little bit of run here and there. Like, some of these San Antonio, Charlotte, Memphis, these are games that, why not give them a run here and there?
Look, okay. I did see
Leonard Miller just dropped 33, 6, and 10 in the G League the other day. This guy can play.
There's a lot of people that are high on Leonard Miller right now. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Now, I did see that Edwards did practice today. Now, this is, for future podcast deals. We're looking at a game Wednesday night against the Spurs at home. There's no guarantee he's going to play Wednesday night. But the other thing I heard was McDaniel probably is not going to play anytime this week, and probably maybe not even next week.
Yeah, from what I read, it was, I think the recovery process was taking a little longer than they had hoped. I mean, if you watch his injury, I'm surprised he's coming back even
right
around this time. Man, that ankle completely flipped. I think what I read was that they were hoping for next week, which I think is good to get those two back around that time, because I don't know if you've looked at our schedule after
it gets a little hairy after this, right?
Every team is a winning record team, so that'll be a test for the Wolves, and I think it'll be beneficial to get back a Jaden and an Ant for that run. I think J-Max getting there as well. I know he practiced a little bit today.
He practiced today. Yep.
So that'll help.
One thing that's got me really excited, just based on the Charlotte game, the last time we talked, you made a comment that it just kind of lit a fire inside me. And you're like, Rudy Gobert, that's like the Utah Rudy Gobert. And you're damn right on that. And not only Utah, like pre-COVID Rudy Gobert is what we're seeing right now. And he is really a lot of fun to watch right now. And I'm not saying that because he had 8 dunks or whatever in one game the other night. And they said that's because Edwards wasn't in the game. But you're right. I think he is a defensive player of the year candidate again. And what was interesting was, I believe in Charlotte, there was one point, because, the Wolves have taken so much flack about playing 2 centers in a starting lineup. But against Charlotte, they had all 3. Yeah, baby. They had Nas in there too. And that was because you have to have the 3 best players on the floor that you can at that time. It doesn't matter if they're big or, they don't fit their shorts or whatever it is. You put the best players on the floor to help you win games, correct?
Yeah, and Rudy was asked about it after the game too, and he was essentially like, "Well, we're big, but we don't play like bigs half the time, or at least Cat. He's like, Cat can play like a big when he wants to bully people, but he's on the perimeter. Nas can play wherever the hell he wants to because he's essentially a guard. And I know there was a little bit of defensive lapse there, but I mean, they've never played on the floor together. I mean, minus practice probably, but the offense was cool to see 3 bigs on the floor. I mean, when I saw them come out, you're like, holy shit! Like it is.
Well, you don't even think of Nas as like a big, right? Like you say, maybe a point forward or something, but like you don't think of him as a big, but yet he is.
Well, and I imagine a lineup of just one day, my own imagination of like, imagine a lineup when you've got Rudy, Cat, and Nas out there, and then you add a Jaden McDaniels playing the 2 Ants at the point. That's a huge lineup, an amazing defensive lineup. I mean, that would be so cool to see. And people were giving the Wolves shit for playing 3 bigs. I don't know why. Like, I'm all here for it. Because the game of basketball has changed, folks. And I mean, 15 years ago, you would have never ever seen this, neither, or even just a guy like a Cat and a Nas who can both play center and they can be on the perimeter, guard perimeter players. Like it's fun to see. Now Rudy, you mentioned Rudy playing at an all-time level. I'm even seeing like, I mean, even when we watch Rudy, like he's kind of a guy where, you look at the stats, you're like, holy shit, 3-4 blocks, 10 boards, but it's even more. He does more than that too, right? Like you watch guys drive into the lane and immediately it's just a kick out, right? Like they have the easiest lane to the basket. Rudy is just there and they're kicking it out because they don't. He just creates such a presence of rim protection, and it's so cool to see. And I'm reading that he might be playing the best basketball of his career right now.
That's what I was trying to allude to. You know, I said pre-COVID in Utah, but you were the one that brought it up. But obviously, it's early in the season. But that's what I would say, and the reason being is because defensively, you know what you get with him, but I think offensively as well. I think on both sides of the ball, and that's why I think this could be one of his better years in his career for sure.
Yeah, and it's just, I think it's cool for Wolves fans too with how that trade went down last year and what the season was like for him last year. Just to see this complete flip of it's great, and Rudy is, you know, a big reason why we are 15-4. If you ask a lot of people around the league, like, this guy is DPOY. I mean, hands down.
Okay. You got anything else with the Wolves?
There's one guy I want to talk about, and I
think I know who you're talking about, but go ahead.
Briefly mentioned him last time. Troy Brown Jr.
Oh, okay. That's not the guy I thought you were going to talk about. I thought you were going to talk about the Western Conference Coach of the Month. But
we are going to mention him.
All right.
Troy Brown Jr. Where did he? What a role player.
So my buddy just asked, where did he come from?
So, well, he was a starter with the Lakers last year.
Okay.
He was drafted 15th overall with Washington a couple years ago, 2018, I think. Spent a couple years in Chicago, went to LA, and now he's here. What a role he has filled, I think, since, like, this guy has come in and given great minutes. Always seems to do the right thing, which I felt like I had to mention, just give him some flowers, because he has, I mean, he rode the bench for a little bit, just always seemed ready, came in, diving loose balls, just hitting big threes, good rebounds. Like, he's a big reason why we won the Charlotte game.
Right. Okay. Well, there's a couple games that he's a big reason why we were at least in it. So my question is, with a guy like Troy Brown, is it like a Josh Dobbs, where folks, obviously he's been around before, but not in the role that he is right now? Is it possible that people can watch film on him and say, all right, now we've got him figured out? I mean, you move from team to team for a reason. NBA is a little different than the NFL, you know, but is there a chance that, you know, in a couple of weeks we won't be singing his praises because either the other teams have done their homework, or he's just on a really good run right now?
So I think I mean, I know where you're coming from, but I don't think he's doing anything spectacular, if you know what I mean.
Right.
He's playing a role that you can't really stop, quote unquote, right? Like, it's, if he's got an open three, he's gonna take an open three. He's going in for loose balls. He's just going up for rebounds like that. It's little things that I don't know. Like if I'm trying to game plan to stop Anthony Edwards, that's a little different than, like, no one's game planning to stop a Troy Brown open three in the corner, right? Like, it's no one's.
And you're not looking to plug him into the starting rotation anytime soon or anything like that. Right. Okay. I follow what you're saying.
Yeah, he's filling a role and he's doing it very nicely, and those are exactly the types of guys you need. I think anyone a couple weeks ago would have I mean, he's got I mean, I think he's making 4 or 5 million, so he's got a decent chunk of cash that you can trade for another impact player. But now I think I mean, he's built himself into this rotation that I think he's carved himself some nice minutes, which has been nice to see.
And Shake Milton just kind of keeps going down, down, down a little bit, huh? He's
Now
struggling right now.
he's struggling, and it was interesting to see because he was a nice guy with Philly for a couple of years, and um, from what I can tell, Minnesota's more of a half court offense, whereas Shake thrived in Philly, which I guess was more of a fast break kind of
Right in the open
court
floor.
offense, where he was able to operate a little differently. So he just looks so unconfident out there, which is hard to see because he's a good ball player. And it's very rare that he does something well in the game, and you can
Right.
just tell he's not in the right spot, which
Right.
sucks. But I saw one trade floated out there, would be trading him, Wendell Moore, and like 3 or 4 second-round picks for Tyus Jones. That's a trade I do. I mean,
right. That's something that you called for, I think, the last time we talked.
yeah, and now Tyus would be a rental because he's only got one more year. But I think you definitely try to re-sign Tyus. I don't know what kind of cap space you have to do that, but it's
now if you were able to sign him long term, would he be your point guard after Mike Conley then, or are you looking strictly as backup point guard?
I think he's now a hell of a backup point. Like that is the best backup point guard in my opinion to have on your team. Because when I think about this team, you think about, all right, what point guard runs this team, and it's a Mike Conley-esque kind of guy. Now, Tyus isn't going to give you the threes that Mike Conley can shoot, but I do think Tyus might be a nice piece moving forward as the starter. But he has carved himself out quite a role as a backup. Even with Memphis, he was a backup.
Right. Yeah, he killed us too. Yeah.
Every former Wolves player does, but it's I don't know. I mean, Mike Conley's contract is expiring this year. I don't know how much left he will have in the tank going forward. I would love to bring him back, maybe one more year. But I think that would be an option. Now, with Shake, like he was brought here to fill kind of the Jalen Noel kind of role of just an off the bench scorer, and he's just provided almost no scoring at all off the bench. So, you trade a guy like Shake, this team's going to need to find an off the bench shooter. Kind of like I think about like a Malik Beasley type player.
Right. Well, because you brought Jalen Noel up, and, I liked him in some regards, but he was so inconsistent, and was not like, if he got hot, he might give you 12 points off the bench because he was hot. But most nights he'd give you 2. You know what I mean? So
2, and he was a turnstile on defense, right? Like he would not fit the mold of this team. And I remember when we played Memphis, he's actually on a 10-day contract right now with Memphis. He got a second one.
He had 16 the other night, I think.
Yeah,
what I saw.
And guys were, well, I think he scored like 10 against when we played him, and like, well, Jalen would be great on this team. I'm like,
no, I don't think so.
None of you remember what, like, yeah, he had a cool couple games where you're like, great, love it. But man, this guy could not defend, and he just does not fit the number one defensive team in the NBA. So,
right.
But I think it's something to look at going forward with this team is finding scorer, whether that be the buyout market when the time comes. We still have an open roster spot, so there's still a chance to go out and get something. I don't know what that would be right now. I don't know who's giving up an off the bench scoring threat at this point in the year, but it's something that the Wolves will have to look at.
Okay. Anything you want to say about the coach of the month?
First of all, I love it.
He's earned it.
How can you not? Yeah. The question I have for you, because I wrote this down, there have only been 2 coaches in Minnesota Timberwolves history that have won Coach of the Month. Can you name me the 2 coaches, and can you name me the years? I won't say the months, but the years that it happened.
There's only 2 previous Timberwolves coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Flip Saunders, 2004.
So Flip Saunders won it 4 times.
Okay.
You got 04.
Okay. All right. Oh, but he won it 4 times. And there's one other Timberwolves coach that
If you think maybe
I'm going to go with his kid.
No, that would have disappointed me, but
yeah, right. That would have disappointed us all. Like, I can't think of
Houston Rockets.
So, Rick Adelman,
No, other Houston Rockets.
Kevin McHale. Oh my God!
What
All
year?
right. 2006.
No,
I don't
a
know.
little later, 2009.
Okay. I would have never. I still have a T-shirt that I bought on the street outside Target Center that had Kevin McHale's likeness on it, and it just said, "No more McHale." And that's because I lived through him as a GM and a coach, and I loved Kevin McHale as a player, as a guy on Cheers, loved him as a guy at the University of Minnesota, but a general manager sucked. As a coach, sucked. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to put an asterisk next to that Coach of the Month one.
Right. Well, I think the Coach of the Month we have now is one of the. Now I've seen some bad. I mean, I grew up with just horrible Timberwolves teams, but I will say, ever since Chris Finch took over, this team has been different. I think, and I think Finchy is a big reason why. And I think he's a great coach. What are your thoughts?
I agree. Once again, it gives me that question about, like, all right, you have somewhat of the same kind of pieces, but I think we covered that the last time. You don't. You have a different point guard situation. You have Karl Anthony Towns starting the season instead of ending the season. And that's really when his season started, was at the end of the season. It seems that players are buying into what is going on here. And I don't know how much that has to do with Tim Conway. I mean, whatever, who is at the in the front office, at the helm of it. But I'll be honest, I like the hire. When they hired Chris Finch, I was like, I thought it was a comparably to Wolves coaches that we've had. Okay. And brought up a couple of them tonight. Randy Whitman should have never been our head coach. Okay. I know the sympathy choice, Mr. Saunders' kid, it should have never happened though, And so Rick Adelman is a very good NBA coach, but by the time we got him, that ship had sailed. We've just had really poor luck, I think, a lot of the time as far as where I coach. And the guys that I didn't think Dwayne Casey was a bad coach, but they fired him before I thought they gave him a chance, Yeah. So I like where we're at right now. I like where the Wolves are, the position they're in, and the fact that I think Chris Finch is going to probably be here, and there's going to be some stability here. 5 years from now, his team's going to look completely different, but I like him. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he manages the games well. I think I think for me, you can kind of tell what a relationship of players and the coach looks like in the game, and the body language on the sideline. And I think the players really respect Chris Finch. I think he does a good job standing up for his guys sometimes too. I think there's some challenges that he'll throw out there that I'm like, you were going to lose that one, and you threw it out there. I think for your player kind of
He's
thing.
actually been pretty good with his challenges this year, though, right?
He
Like
has. I
the
think
one
more
the other
last
night
year, but
was, and I think he lost. Like he won that challenge. The one
that
on
one
the
was stupid.
point,
Yeah.
that was ridiculous. That it's kind of like Florida State. What do you want to do? Why do you play the games? That's perfect NBA defense. You're allowed to go straight up. So I didn't,
And touch. Yeah.
Yep, but it didn't go his way. But I think it was a great challenge. I really like Chris Finch.
I agree. I think he's a good fit for the team. And again, like I said before, like the players have bought in. I think Anthony Edwards loves them. I mean, but from what I read is like they will go at it, but I don't want to say go at it, but like Ant will tell him how it is, but Finch will tell him how it is, type
Right.
of thing. And it's a mutual respect of we're here to get the job done. So
Okay.
It's cool to watch.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else on the Wolves?
I don't think so. I think we'll be ready for Wednesday. Hopefully, we'll be 16-4 and have a happy.
And then I think it's Memphis after that, right? They're still jawless. Is that right?
They are still jawless, thankfully, but
okay. So we're looking, and then the schedule starts to get a little rough after that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Wednesday night. I'm looking forward to Friday and everything else after that. Now, speaking of this weekend, we have one thing that we can briefly touch on. The Minnesota Vikings will be playing the I'm still going to call them the Oakland Raiders on Sunday. The only thing I want to bring up very quickly, and we can maybe get into the Vikings a little bit later in the week, but who's the quarterback going to be on Sunday? Because they're already talking. Yeah. And you brought it up the other night, and they're already talking about it.
I think it's going to be Dobbs. They haven't announced anything, but I think Dobbs is the pick. I've also heard Nick Mullins, and I don't know. At this point, it's a crapshoot, right? Like you're just let's see what hits in that.
I would think just because, and yeah, the last two games were tough, but I would think that you would have to go with Josh Dobbs on Sunday. There's nothing that makes me come on. There's nothing that makes me want to Nico, stop it. There's nothing that makes me think that Nick Mullins is ready to give us an opportunity to get to the playoffs. Yeah, it'd be great to be able to look at a rookie and see, because I am still intrigued. But I think if you're really going for the playoffs, which why would you not in the NFL, you've got to go with Josh Dobbs, regardless of the kind of game that he had last week or maybe the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and he's I don't like to say like, he's still learning the playbook. But he is still gelling at the end of the day. And he also has only played 4 games with
right.
a new team, and he had the whole bye week
without a running game. Right. And are you sold that Jefferson's going to play on Sunday?
I don't know, because the report that just came out was that he was ready to go for Denver. And
hey, you heard it here first. Sorry.
That's what I read. I don't know if it's true. I know also, unfortunately, a lot of Minnesota fans were giving him some shit on social media.
And so he cried about that. I'm sorry. I don't want to be the guy that looked at, but I questioned the injury right off the bat from the day that it happened. And I don't want to be a conspiracy guy. I love the Kennedys. Okay. But do I think that Justin Jefferson could have been back before? Now, I mean, this is a whole another conversation that we might have to have. And maybe I don't want to get into it right now, but my good friends that I watch the Vikings with know how I feel. And do I think that Justin Jefferson could have helped this team out this year more than he has? Yep, I do. And we can get into that, like I say, because I think we're gonna meet again in a few days, right?
We are Thursday.
Do we want to table that and then get into that on perhaps Thursday?
I think that's a good discussion for Thursday. The one thought that popped in my head really quick with Jefferson is assuming Dobbs is your quarterback, right?
Yeah.
We were winning games without Jefferson. When did he get hurt? That was because Cousins won. We were winning games with Cousins without Jefferson, correct?
Right. Yeah. So, actually, a lot of games without Jefferson. We didn't win a lot with him in the lineup.
So, assuming Jefferson is in the lineup and assuming Dobbs was your quarterback, do you think Jefferson creates a better offense even with Dobbs as your quarterback? Because I mean, you saw what Addison did, you saw what Brandon Powell did, Hawkinson, but does it really change much when Dobbs is your quarterback?
If the opposing defense can keep Dobbs in the pocket like Chicago did last Sunday, I don't think it matters who you have, because Dobbs wasn't able to find anybody. And, there were some folks that said, well, Dobbs doesn't really have an arm. I don't know if that's necessarily true. There were a couple balls that he threw with a lot of zip that his receivers were not able to catch. Okay, but I was confused as to why Hawkinson was not thrown to at all against the Bears for the most part. Right?
Well, he was once or twice, and unfortunately, it was Dobbs who didn't necessarily throw the ball in the right spot, leading to it led to a reception, just not what we needed. So,
but when did Dobbs help the Vikings the most? His first two games, when I was calling him Fran Tarkington, and there was pressure, and he was able to move outside the pocket, and that's when he was able to either roll out and find his man, or he was able to run. Against the Bears, they did not let him out of the pocket at all. And he proved to everyone and their mother that he can't find an open receiver, much less someone that's in double coverage or triple coverage. He threw for a lot of interceptions. So, but moving forward, who do I think gives us the best chance? It's not Nick Mullins, and it's not Mr. Hall, okay, who have not played or taken the reins of this team. So I think if you are moving forward and trying to still make the playoffs, I think you got to go with Dobbs now, right?
Oh, I agree, and it's. I don't know how long the leash is. I don't know but you give him another game for sure, because when you get into the teeth of, you got 2 games against Detroit coming up, you got Green Bay coming up. If he can figure it out against, I almost said Oakland, if he can figure it out against Las Vegas,
or
Los
Angeles,
then great, because I think that helps you get into those tougher games here. And Vegas is still going to be a tough game.
It's going to be a very tough game, even with the backup quarterback. But then again, the Bears, we should have won by 21 points. No question. Now, I think the argument with Mullins is that he will be a better field general. He would be able to also get the ball. He's the best option of getting the ball to Jefferson out of the 3. That's what I'm reading, or that's at least the argument. And that he is going to be best at clock management, at calling, or at least the plays that are called for him, he's going to be able to run it the best out of those three options. Here's the deal. He has not taken a snap this entire year. So do you want to throw to the Wolves? I don't think that Hall is ready either. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, if Dobbs throws 3 picks in the first half again and you're still in the game, then maybe it's time for a switch, right? But I just don't think that Mullins is the right choice at this point.
No, and we were talking about this. We're in this no man's land of like, you need to go to get a playoff spot, because the last thing you want is to be like the A seed, like on the outside looking in.
Right.
But at the same time, like I've barely seen Mullins play, and as much as Hall's been ready the past week or so, and he had another week to get ready. Had a very impressive first drive before he got
right. But you can't. I don't think you're going to put your playoff hopes into one drive before you got a concussion.
Well, we essentially did when we put him out there. So
because you had nothing else at that time. Remember, you just acquired Dobbs,
True.
And there was no way Dobbs was getting in that game, probably, if the rookie didn't get hurt. You know what I mean? Like, unless he throws like 5 picks, you might go to Dobbs then. But for all intents and purposes, Dobbs wasn't going to get in that game had Hall stayed healthy. I don't think.
No, and I think what I'm trying to say, or with Mullins, is more like I think the floor, the ceiling just isn't as high. With Hall, it's more like it could be big reward or big loss, right? So like you kind of are flipping the coin.
Right. But I would say the percentage is more towards failure with the rookie than anything else, right? I mean, Troy Aikman, I think, was 1-15 his rookie season as the quarterback of the Cowboys on a terrible team, but it's not my point. It's hard for a rookie to perform in the NFL, period.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what do my students say? Facts, right? Like that's it, so that's why I say, and like if Dobbs does not have a good game on Sunday, oh well, because this season is kind of 50-50 either way anyways, right?
Yep. We'll see. I think it was that weird situation of, what was it, the Case Keenum season where
right. Yep.
Zimmer had to pick between, I don't even know, Bridgewater, Keenum, and who else do we have in there?
Sam Bradford. Originally, but Bradford was
pretty
hurt. Much gone after. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, I think it's a good Thursday conversation with Jefferson.
Okay, because there are some Vikings things that I want to revisit. Not only the Justin Jefferson thing. I think we hit on the quarterback deal, but there are other points that I want to bring up about the Vikings. But that's what's great about doing it twice a week, man. All right, well, unless there's anything else you want to talk about, I think that pretty much does it for the week of November 4th until November 6th or 7th or whatever it is. Correct?
Yep.
All right. So for Noah Stoerzinger, I'm Jonny Voss. This is the Show to Be Named Later podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in a few days.